And then I believe we are going live now. Can everyone see me? I'm like waiting for YouTube to catch up.
There's a lot of people in the chat already. That's really cool.
This is
I'm very
awesome.
excited. Okay, cool.
Yay.
All right, so hello everyone. My name is Jocelyn. My pronouns are she, her, and this is my YouTube channel, Yogi with a Book. Today, we are talking about all things middle grade. Our panel is called Family, Friendship, and Determination in Middle Grade. This is part of the Social Distance Book Fest, where you can stay at home while supporting authors and indie booksellers, and hopefully add a few new books to your TBR. I'm going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves in just a bit, but if you're wondering what the Social Distance Book Fest is, a brief overview is that this is an all-day event, and this is actually the final panel of the day. So there has been a whole playlist all day of all of the other amazing panels that have been going on. You'll be able to find all of that information linked down below. But it was created by a group of bookworms from all corners of the internet, including 18 panels, more than 80 authors, virtual fandom meetups, virtual signing opportunities, and amazing giveaways. So you can also check the website, which is in the description box. And also check out the bookshop.org page where you can order books from featured authors and support indie bookstores. 10% of the proceeds will be donated to the Center for Disaster Philanthropy's COVID-19 fund. So we hope everyone is enjoying the Social Distance Book Fest, and I'm going to turn this around to all of you to introduce yourselves.
Should we go in order?
Sure.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Kim, and I'm the author of Stand Up, Yumi Chung. It just came out about a month ago.
I should have brought my book.
That's what I'm basically looking for.
Get it. I'm going to do the same thing. Let's see if she can make it back in time. I'm going to go slow. My name is Clarabelle A. Ortega. I'm the author of Ghost Squad that came out April 7th. I don't know when that was because time is fake. And it is a middle grade paranormal based on Dominican folklore. That was not slow. That was fast.
My name's
they're back.
Go ahead.
My name's Ernesto Cisneros, and I'm the author of Effort Divided. It came out on March 31st, and it's a story of the separation of families.
Go ahead, Raina. I got to catch my breath.
Okay. I'm Raina Lusalagre. My book is The Dreamweaver. I also had to run to go get it. It's my first event. I'm so excited to be here because everyone else's book here, I think, is out. And I am currently reading them. And I'm a huge, because I read a lot of books at the same time. And like, you're all amazing. Like, amazing. I'm so grateful and excited to be here with you all. So, yay.
Yay.
My name is L'Oreal Ryan, and I wrote Into the Tall, Tall Grass. It's very shiny. It is about a girl who goes on a journey through the magical desert to save her grandmother's life, and it is out now.
Yay!
We're so I love it.
Okay. I also, for everyone watching, I do have all of the authors' Twitters linked below, as well as the Goodreads for all of their books. So go check them out. They're all great. But to move on to the panel itself. So we're talking about family and friendship. And I wanted to first talk about your characters and their families. So they all come from multicultural families, and that looks a little bit different in each of these books. But how integral was that to your story?
So I'll go first. So my story is written from the perspective of a second-generation American. So just like me, Yumi was born in America, raised in America, but her parents are immigrants from Korea. And so I really wanted to write a little bit about that identity, that
experience of being born and raised here, but also having traditional values from your parents' homeland and how those values can collide. And so writing about family was hugely important in my story. In the beginning, Yumi was a lot like me when I was 11 years old. And, right about when you're 11, you start to realize how your family might be a little different from some of your friends' families, the American family that are on TV. And then when I was 11, I would be so embarrassed. And so I would just wish that they could be normal, normal, quote unquote. And that's kind of where Yumi is in the beginning of the story. And through her adventures in comedy camp and accidentally stealing someone's identity, she kind of gets to know her parents and where they come from a little bit better. And so in a sense, the family story is really a story about Yumi coming to accept both sides of who she is as a Korean American and to kind of embrace that she is enough just as she is. So that family story where she kind of clashes with her parents is very much indicative of what's going on in her heart and in her mind, like how she's coming to grips with who she is and where she stands in the world as a second generation American.
That's so cool. So for Ghost Squad, my main character, Lucely Luna, lives in a haunted house, but it's not like a scary haunted house. It's a house haunted by her ancestors, and that is actually taken from Dominican folklore. So it's a huge part of the story because the magic comes from, my heritage. And basically the ghosts, they shift between firefly and ghost form. And our folklore, if I can speak, says that the fireflies watch over us and protect us, and they're our ancestors. So I thought that would be really cool to share because it's something that, folklore is like passed down word of mouth. If you have it in a book, it's so much easier for us to preserve. And then aside from that, just like the little interactions, like everything that happens in the book from the very beginning, like, waking up to merengue to clean your house on a weekend, eating like fried cheese and salchichon and asking for a blessing when you talk to a elder. It's all like these little things that I grew up with that were my childhood that were very different from, my white classmates that didn't have the same sort of upbringing that I did. And I just really roll my childhood into the book, and it's everything that Ghost Squad is. So
that's awesome. So for mine, I am half. I'm like half white, half Mexican American. I grew up sort of in this in-between place. And so this is like my letter to my family, and sort of that multi-generational relationship with the grandmother and the granddaughter, and then her dad's in the military and far off, and just like all those different intricate pieces of kind of like what Clarabelle was saying too, just like, the way that the grandmother speaks in the story is almost exactly how my grandmother speaks. And like her memories with her grandfather it's like just the way the words come out and the syntax is like exactly the way they spoke to us. And they still speak to us, the ones that are around. And so it's sort of my like love letter to my family. I didn't really get to see a lot of like mixed kids in any books that I read growing up. And I'm still struggling with what to call myself all the time. And so this is just like my attempt at figuring it out. And it's like for me and my brother and my sister, because we're all three of us, we're just like, what are we? And what are, are we enough of this? Are we enough of that? Mm-hmm. And we never are of anything. So this was just my way of kind of exploring those nuances a little bit. I think in the future, I'd like to go a little bit further. And do it a little deeper. I think this was like my first attempt at it. So,
first book, right? So
first book, right? And it was kind of like my first, like with the grandmother, especially, I really focused on that side of the family. And so like with the second one I'm working on, I'm kind of focusing more on like a meld of both sides a little bit more. So I don't know. It's always a work in progress.
For me, my response is a little similar to that. Growing up, I grew up with a sense of disentitlement because I internalized all the negative things that the society said about Latinos and the media and the way we were negatively portrayed. We weren't normal. We were second-class citizens. And when I wrote this book, it was never supposed to be published. I just wrote it for my daughter at the time, and I wanted her to see the beauty in our culture. I remember growing up, I'd see my dad in his green uniform, the green pants and the green shirt, and said Frank right here. And sometimes he'd come pick me up from school, and I would always be embarrassed. I'm like, Dad, please change out of your uniform. But really, now, I mean, I see that uniform as it represents everything he did for us. And so I wanted, my kids at home and my kids at school, my students, I wanted them to see themselves in a positive light. So it was really important for my book. I just want them to really see themselves out there and to see that to see the value and who they were.
I can't be crying as the host. We're going to raise back a little bit.
Yeah, we should be able to cry. Drama.
It's fine.
I'm a water sign. This is not okay.
So I realized I was nervous before, and I didn't even say what my book is about. I was too excited to be here with all of you and with all of your books. But The Dreamweaver is about a 12-year-old girl named Zoe, who is also half Latinx, and she is connecting for the first time in a while with her Cuban side, with her mom who's passed away and her grandpa, and remembering her mom a lot more because her dad didn't really keep her mom's culture around for a long time. And then that's actually just one part of the book. It's really there's darker moments and heavier moments and more solemn moments and a lot of grief and mourning, but it's really hopefully a more lighthearted side read about being with family, finding the good parts and and the fun and the joy and the love and the humor and the affection in family. And also the big challenge in the book is that her grandpa's bowling alley is on the verge of closing, so she's trying as much as a 12-year-old can, which kids can be pretty resourceful. She's trying to really help him save the bowling alley even when he doesn't want her help. But listening to Ernesto is bringing up a lot of memories, because I remember also feeling sometimes, and I'm so embarrassed to even say or talk about this. I wasn't planning on talking about this, but I get it. I remember that feeling of being embarrassed, and sometimes by part of, maybe that's just, I don't know, but speaking only family members who only spoke Spanish, and it's I wish you spoke English, when you're picking me up from school. And I don't. But that's not really a part of this book. This book is, I didn't put that part into this book. This book is sort of the complete flip, and maybe more so for the next generation of kids who maybe are not feeling as connected to their culture and want more of it and are hungering for it. Like Zoe, who wants to know more about her mom's culture and feel more connected, and wants to feel more connected to her grandpa, and maybe not being quizzed on her Spanish skills all the time because she doesn't remember as much as she should, or she feels she should. But I grew up fully Latinx. I'm the first generation born here, but my mom was raised here. So I'm sort of first generation and a half, because she's pretty American. We're combination, very, very Cuban and very American. But so anyway, that's The Dreamweaver, and it's in a I don't think Zoe ever feels embarrassed in The Dreamweaver about being Cuban or speaking in Spanish. She's just hungering for more of it.
And that's actually a really great lead-in into our second question, and it's something that Clarabelle had already talked about as well. But if you could just point to a moment, whether it's something really big that you put in, or a very small detail that you wrote specifically for a younger you, or for other people like you, especially because, I think we've all sort of talked about this already. It's not being able to see yourself in media as a younger kid. So what is just one or a couple of things that you specifically put in there because you're this is what I needed, this is what I want to give back?
Sure. So, I did talk about some of it, which was sort of the religious aspect. When we see each other, when we greet each other, in my culture, we say Sion, Mami, Sion, Papi, which is a shortened version of bendición, which just means asking for a blessing. And that's something that's so normal for us. And I wanted to make sure that was in the book, even though it made me a little bit nervous to write something religious into a paranormal book, because it's a balancing act. But I was I can't portray her culture sort of authentically the way that I grew up with it, unless I include this. And then I would say the other thing is probably right at the beginning. There's a big scene where they're all having breakfast. It's Lucely and her dad, and then all the ghost family. And there's so many of them that it's almost like so many people talking at the same time. And it just like brought back so many memories of growing up and just be like, I don't really know that uncle that well. I'm not sure that I could fully know his name or remember him, but he's my uncle. And like that person's also my cousin because I came from like a huge family. And I wanted to portray that in Lucely's ghost family. Like she has all these people around her all the time that are her family members. She might not know some of them really well, but they're still family and they're still a really important part of her life. And coming from such a big family, like I have 8 aunts and uncles on one side and 12 or 13 on the other. I have hundreds of cousins. I probably don't know some of them. And I just wanted to sort of include that and show like, hey, it's normal to have like a really big, loud family because that's how I grew up.
I love that. That's so cool. So mine's like a little bit humorous. So my mom grew up in South Texas, kind of on the border in Corpus, and we live here in New Mexico now, and they're totally different, like Latinx type of cultures. But I did put one little nod into my mom, and it's about the tamales at the beginning. It's like in chapter 2 when Sonia, the main character's sister, is eating a tamale, and she's eating it with ketchup. And her sister is like completely disgusted. The main character is completely disgusted. And so there's like this eternal debate going on in South Texas about can you eat tamales with ketchup or not? And like some people think you can and some people think it's horrible. And in New Mexico, it is absolutely unacceptable and they've never heard of it and it's not cool. But that's why I put that in there, just because I grew up with that fight of people fighting over like, you shouldn't be eating that with ketchup. You need chili or, you know, whatever. So and it's funny because my cousins that live down in South Texas, they were like crack up and they like fight about it still to this day because like half of them like it and half of them don't. So that was my little nod to that.
For me, the response is a little different. I mean, I put lots of little Easter eggs that I thought were going to be little, you know, like kind of fun, like chetos and the paletero, raspados, and all the little things that I could find in my culture. My friends and I would always joke around about being ghetto rich and having all these things, luxuries that nobody else has. You know, I can go get an elote from the corner over there from the guy outside. I don't have to travel anywhere. There's a guy who comes over and brings me paletas. I can get all sorts of things. So it was almost like a privilege. But I think the thing that I snuck into the book, I'm not sure if people how aware they are of this, but I actually just grabbed my entire freaking neighborhood where I grew up and I put it in there. I stuck everything. I actually just stuck my mom in the story. People ask me like, you know, who I grabbed my nephews, everybody. And it was kind of like my own inside joke that, you know what, it's my book. I'll do whatever I want. I'm going to put everybody who I love and put it in there. And that's what I did. So every time that I look at the pages, it's a giant Easter egg for myself too, because I just get to see my family. So it's almost like it's more of a journal than it is a book. But that's what it's for me. So.
Aw, that's so awesome. Mine is mine incorporates my Cuban culture in a lot of subtle ways because the character is like rediscovering her Cuban half. So I put in a lot of like little details that I grew up with, like an azabache, which is like a black charm that's supposed to ward off the evil eye. That actually I made another one of her friends, also Cuban American, and that the grandma gives to everyone for good luck. And I always grew up like very skeptical and Americanized, like, there's no such thing. This is nonsense. Like, and I don't know. Now I lost my azabache, and I'm like, we're in a pandemic. Where is my azabache? I need my azabache. There's azabache, and then there's the food. Like, she's excited to eat her abuelo's cooking, and she eats foods like ropa vieja, which means old clothes, which was again not something I was super excited about as a little kid. Although it tastes really good. If anyone's ever had ropa vieja. Like a shredded beef dish, Cuban dish. And so it's like in there in a lot of like subtle ways as she's reconnecting with her grandpa and remembering her mom. And also I'm babbling on because I'm a little bit nervous. I don't know if I said earlier that my mom, I'm the first time she's born here. My mom was raised in the US. I don't know if I said she was born here because she wasn't, but anyway, I don't it's on YouTube forever and ever and ever. And I wanted it to be accurate. So anyway, I don't know. It's a silly thing, but I mean, it's a I'm just babbling on, guys. I'm nervous. I'm sorry. It's my first author event ever. I'm so excited.
You're doing so well.
Thanks.
You're good. You're good.
For me, I mean, I included a lot of like, especially foods, like little things. Like you get the kimchi jjigae, and then the mom's wearing a Korean face mask, and they say like fighting. So there's a lot of little Easter eggs like that. But probably like the biggest thing I put in there was there's this very emotional moment towards the middle end of the book where Yumi kind of sees her dad crying for the first time. And I think up until that point, I think she has her preconceived notions of why her parents are so hard on her about doing well in school and getting this scholarship and studying for this test and specifically not supporting her in her stand-up comedy. But it's not until that moment where they kind of break down and the dad and Yumi are so vulnerable and they're kind of sharing with each other these things that they've been holding inside. And that moment was really important to me because when Yumi comes outside, she smells cigarette smoke. And she sees her dad sitting in the alley on an upturned milk crate. And that was a memory that I had as a child of my father. So my father passed away very early when I was 6 years old. So I don't have very many memories of him, but I do remember when he was stressed out, we used to own like a little produce store. He would go to the back and he would smoke on an upturned vegetable crate. And I know there, at one point, one of our businesses burned down. It was a very stressful time. Money was very tight. And so I had this visceral moment, even at a young age. I think I might have been at 5 or 6 years old at the time. And seeing the stress of my immigrant parents and what they were going through just to kind of make it in this country, I was able to use that smell and that moment in this book sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. But when young readers have been telling me that's the moment where they cried, I can see why, because that was a very real moment for me. And so I'm so glad I got to share that in my book because Yumi and her parents kind of come to see each other for the first time.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So speaking of main characters, what is a character trait that you each share with your protagonist? Because we haven't actually talked too much specifics about your characters.
So am I up first? I think it's me.
Yeah.
So my main character is Yolanda, and she is a bit of a grouch. She's kind of lonely, a little bit grouchy. She's stubborn. She's really smart. She's a little bit jealous. So when I was that age, I was the biggest grouch. Actually, I was a big grouch, like for most of my childhood. My sister likes to every year on my birthday put a picture up of me being like horribly not looking good in any pictures because I don't want to be in the pictures and I just didn't want to be a part of anything that they were doing. And I was such a grouch. And so I'm not really like that anymore. I grew out of it, but Yolanda is very much like that. So she just kind of does her own thing. She doesn't want to be bothered by everyone else. And she's just a little bit of a loner, but like through the story, she changes. And so it was like a nod to my growing up is changing and being like, okay with, just because you were always labeled a grouch doesn't mean you have to be a grouch forever. And so you can like change by the end. And so she comes around and maybe she's still a little bit grouchy sometimes, but it's like she has a deeper understanding of why she was being so grouchy.
No, it's my turn. Oh, sorry.
You whispered it.
I think for Efren, growing up, my parents were always at work, and I remember coming home and then I'd hear them having the conversations about worrying about money and finances and everything else, and I think I always internalized that stuff too. And so when I was 12, I already had I don't think my mom knows, but I had 2 paper routes. And it was my way of contributing. I also had 2 younger siblings, and I had to go pick them up from school on my bicycle. And pretty much, I think I kind of raised my siblings. And so I think the sense of responsibility where you basically grow up before your time, and you don't really have a childhood. So looking back, I almost feel like I didn't really have one because I was always an old person when I was little. So it wasn't until I got to high school that I think I finally got to have my childhood, and I became very immature and very irresponsible. I think because of it, but yeah, I think that's the attribute that I share with Efren.
I think Zoe's attribute that I share is a little bit similar. Like, she's the youngest and she's always worried about her family, and she wants everyone around her to always, like, she wants to solve the problems of everyone around her. And I feel like I'm not always successful, often not successful, but I want to try to like solve everyone's problems. If like I care about you, I want to help fix whatever is bothering you. So I try with varying degrees of success, but I always want to try to help. I remember that I had a really bad cold as I was revising, and I had like this constant, it was not coronavirus, it was before coronavirus, thank God. But it was months before coronavirus. I had like this constant cough at the back of my throat, and like felt like I was constantly holding it in. And I wrote that into like Zoe's mood about her relatives, and like how she felt like she's always trying to like hold everyone's, like, she wants to like help balance everyone's emotions around her without even getting into her own emotions, like the way you would hold like a cough back, where like you just try to like take some honey and like sweeten, I don't remember. I hope I wrote it better in the book, but like you want to kind of like sweeten, you want to like just like take something sweet and like hold it back and not let the cough out. Like you just want to keep everything inside and like let it roll off and just help everyone else. And so but she grows and she learns that she can't solve everything for everyone. She can do her best, and other people love her and are trying to do their best for you, even if you think like sometimes I think the flip to that is becoming like too, like, you get frustrated if you feel like you're trying to fix everyone else, and you realize that like everyone else is also trying to fix it, and they're trying to help you, and everyone, when you love each other, everyone's just trying to help everyone else in their own way. So she sort of comes to learn that lesson too, as I have in my life also.
So for me, top secret news is so this book is actually kind of in a way an autobiography about the way I was feeling. It's a lot about imposter syndrome, and it's a lot about this girl Yumi who really, really is passionate about comedy, but that lacks the confidence to kind of pursue it until she accidentally steals someone else's identity. And so I was having very much the same feelings as I was pursuing my writing. As somebody who grew up in my culture, there weren't a whole lot of creatives, there weren't a whole lot of people. I didn't know any authors. And so for me to kind of pursue this dream to write a book, it was almost like wanting to become a Power Ranger or wanting to join the NBA or be an Olympian. Like, it was so outside of my orbit. I didn't even know the first thing about what that's like. And then learning that it's a creative venture where actually you could put in all this time and effort, but if the market's off, or if somebody wrote a book just like yours, like, your book may not be published. And there was something about that was so scary to me. And my fear of failure was so great. I wasn't even sure how hard or to chase this big dream of mine. And so a lot of the feels in this book are very real. So Yumi and I both struggle with needing a lot of validation, and we struggle with like having the confidence to say, I got this, like, I'm going to pursue it. Like, I think we second guess ourselves a lot. And so those are super raw and real emotions.
Can you guys hear me okay? Because I lost audio for a bit. Just
yeah.
Okay, cool. Just want to make sure. So I related a lot to what Ernesto was saying, which is that so in my family, my parents didn't speak English growing up, so I had to do a lot of like translating and doing things that like a normal kid wouldn't have to do. So I felt a lot of like responsibility on me. And Lucely in my book, which is the main character, she goes through that a lot. They're having financial troubles, and she's sort of very trying to take everything on herself, even though she feels really helpless, which is like a huge, I feel like, middle grade feeling that like is universal. So I can really relate to her in that sense. And also she's constantly stressed like throughout the whole book. Like, even on the cover, like if you see her face on the cover, like she's going through it. Like, she is stressed out, she's scared, and like stress is like, yeah, that's me. And I think there's one particular line that a lot of people have already started quoting back to me, which she says, "I'm delicate and a Hufflepuff." And like, that is very much me. A lot of people think that I'm like loud and out there, but I'm like a very sensitive, soft cinnamon roll, and that is like Lucelli to a T.
I love all of that. So now we're going to talk about the second bit of this panel. So friendships. There's many different friendships explored in these different books, from lifelong best friends to like brand spanking new friendships. What made you choose that specific kind for your book, and like how did it inform it?
For me, I think that first of all, I did have a friend named David growing up, and I think that friends are they kind of round you. They fill in the gaps that the holes that we have as individuals. So I was always very introverted, and I think all my friends are a little bit more extroverted. So they would introduce me to things that and have me try things I normally wouldn't have done. And I think in the book, F and Divided, the best friend is David, and they could not be any more different. And I just thought it was important to show different personalities in the book. And I don't know. For me, friendship, I guess, I don't know how you guys feel about your friends, but sometimes they feel like a family too. And and so I don't know. I guess my best answer. I'm really having a hard time with this one. My best answer is that I don't really think about these things too much. I kind of just put my characters in the story and let them just kind of do their thing. And so I don't really plot out or plan out what they're gonna do or what they're gonna say. It's just they're just themselves. So I don't know. That's not a really good answer, but
I think it's
perfect.
Nice one.
It's great. I love that answer, and I love the part about friends. Sorry, is it my turn to go? Yes, we're going clockwise. Okay. Sorry. I love your answer about friends feeling like family, because that's how I felt about my college group of friends, and still feel, even when we go for a while without talking. Some of those friends, I feel like, will just immediately like pick up that pace again when we're able to finally connect, even if it's been months, sometimes even years. But you just like some friends are forever in the best, most easiest way, and ones that we make in our youth, especially when you've got this history together and you sort of know the core of each other. So I drew on that for the Dreamweaver, my college group of friends who felt like family. But I also drew on my middle school experience, where I had trouble making friends, and a lot of that was probably on me overanalyzing and overthinking it and feeling I was so weird, and maybe I was, but everyone's weird in their own way, and I just had a lot of a very uptight approach to it all. So I mean, I wonder why it was harder to make friends with the girl who's like really uptight. But like I wanted to put in the book that Zoe's new to the Jersey Shore, where her abuelo is, where her papi is, and she's making friends for the first time. So I like talking about making friends for the first time, because first impressions really aren't always right. So like she ends up being really good friends with a girl who she has some issues with, and kind of thinks doesn't like her right off the bat, and therefore she doesn't like her right off the bat, which kind of happened in middle school to me. And like I remember thinking like, oh, I'm nerdy, and so I should immediately be instant friends with like the other nerdy girls who had other ideas about that. And like then some of the girls who I thought were too cool or too popular, they're actually pretty nice. We didn't become bosom buddies, but they were really nice. It's like, oh, maybe this, I don't know. And everyone in middle school is just going through their own thing, which I feel like being in middle school, you don't always realize, which is sort of a contradiction to what I was saying earlier about families. I feel like Zoe, maybe like me, was super aware of her relatives, but way less so of her new friends, where like in the new friend situation, she was like just really thinking about herself, and am I being awkward, and not really realizing other people have their own stuff that they're dealing with that might make them less friendly or more friendly on any given day. So I don't know, I just think it's fun to explore. It was fun exploring new friendships, and how you might end up really liking someone who you thought you wouldn't at the beginning, and they might end up being a really good friend.
Yeah, that's so funny you say that, because Yumi in the beginning of this story is like so that like overanalyzes everything, and she's just so shy and she's so awkward. So she actually like eats lunch in the bathroom stall by herself in her little school. She goes to like a fancy private school, and she thinks everyone's like, you know, very different from her. So she doesn't really put herself out there. So it isn't until she accidentally stumbles into this comedy camp and they've mistaken her for this other camper, and she kind of accidentally takes on this new persona, and that she finds her people, you know, and that's like such the middle school thing, right? Is like when you find your people and they kind of bring out something in you that where you feel accepted and you can just be yourself. And the first friend she meets is this boy named Felipe, and he's like this, you know, funny guy. He's got these sideburns, and he's also like super into comedy. So like they have this moment. It's probably one of my favorite scenes that I wrote, where they like are they're just getting to know each other, and they just, you know, they're talking about this sketch that they saw on SNL the night before, and they're just geeking out. They're like doing the you know, the skit together, and it's just an instant chemistry where they just get each other in a way that no one at her school you know, understood. And so it's almost like her love and passion for comedy overtook all the things that held her back. So all her self-consciousness and all the overanalyzing, like, kind of got thrown back when they were like, "Oh my gosh, did you see the sketch?" And I love that character. Felipe is like is my favorite. He's based on my husband Phil. So Phil and I have been married for 15 years, and he has sideburns and he's chubby and he's funny and he loves Marvel, and so that's totally him. And the way they connect together, their chemistry, the way they finish each other's sentences, and the way they like kind of just instantly bond was a comfort that I wanted to give her in her journey along the way. And like, I got to do this because I'm so corny. My husband, but yeah, so that's a new friendship, and she finally kind of realizes in the end, hey, maybe it wasn't the other kids, maybe it wasn't the school. Maybe it was me, you know, maybe I just wasn't being my authentic self and I was holding myself back. And that's when, you know, she kind of comes full circle there. Yay, friendship. It's the best part of it.
So for me, one of the big themes of Ghost Squad is sort of found family and family that doesn't look like everybody else's around you. So that happens in various ways for Lucely, both because she has ghost family in her house, which, you know, who has that? I don't know, maybe you do. And also with her friends, like her best friend Sid. I really wanted to write a friendship that was just like completely ride or die, like no fighting all the time, because I grew up with so much of that, like so much reading and watching on TV, like girls just hating each other just to hate each other for no reason. And like that does happen, but I just wanted it to be a book where they just support each other no matter what, and they're always there for each other. And Sid balances Lucely out, because like I said, Lucely always stressed all the time, Sid always making jokes, so it like helps her to calm down a little bit, because Sid is just like, hey, we're fine, like, so what, there's giant ghosts chasing us, we're gonna be all right, like, let's name this ghost dragon, let's name him Drago, it's funny, like, who cares. So I just wanted to, you know, have that just juxtaposition of the two personalities, but also to just have this friendship that was like completely loyal and like a family, like they are family. And I thought that was really important to show. And also I really wanted it to be like they're each other's only friends. Like I think that happens a lot in middle school and like high school. You could have like that one, like your one friend who's like your only friend. And I think that's important too, because you know, not everybody has this like huge group of friends. That you're lucky if you have that, you know, but you're also lucky if you have like one loyal friend like Sid. And I wanted to sort of show that dynamic in Ghost Squad, because I think it can be really special and important.
Sure. Is it my turn?
Awesome. I think it's my turn.
Okay, good.
I think it's my turn. Okay. So actually, that's a perfect segue into what I was going to talk about, Claire, about, because so my book is it's like upper middle grade, so they're like 7th, 8th grade-ish. And basically at the beginning of the book, Yolanda and her best friend have sort of broken up. So I sort of was tackling that best friend breakup. that is horribly painful and awful. And I'm sure everyone's had a friendship breakup, and it's the worst. But like Clarabelle was saying, they were basically each other's only friends. And so, but one left, her friend Gita left her for someone else, and that someone else was her twin sister. And so it's like extra painful, because she's trying to like, she's also mad at her friend, but like also misses her. And then she's also mad at her sister for other stuff. And so it's just this awful situation all around. And like some friendship breakups, you don't get like a resolution at the end. And so I did want a resolution at the end to maybe where they don't go back to being best friends, but that they get an understanding somewhere. Because I think a lot of times in middle school or friendship breakups or whatever, you kind of get left without any closure. And so I wanted there to be some kind of closure, because I needed them to feel okay. And then like there's another friendship with Gita's brother that Yolanda and Gita's brother Hasek kind of end up with a friendship, and he's like super crushing on her. And she is like not interested at all, but then she sort of gets interested. And so he is very soft cinnamon roll boy, and she's like kind of harsh, grouchy girl. And so they are kind of the perfect mix, because he brings her to like a place where she will just get out of her head and she will listen to him, but she doesn't really listen to her sister or her ex-best friend or anybody else. But something about the way he talks and like his softness, like makes her listen. And so then they sort of develop a friendship, and he helps her see like what her journey is supposed to be on this whole magical journey through the desert. So it's kind of cool.
Okay, so I think I'm going to take one of the audience questions that we had gotten earlier and ask, what is your favorite thing about writing for middle grade?
Am I the one starting?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I love that we still have some of that like childhood innocence in middle grade, where like we can talk about heavy topics, but still filter them through sort of a sweeter, more innocent, more hopeful lens. But we still have like the maturity, like they're like middle grade kids are quickly they're about to become teenagers. And so like they understand the world around them. It's not like the super little kids who are, like who have a very idealized version of the world. So it's like this crossroads between like childhood sweet innocence and like mature, more adult understanding. And you can sort of filter the like heavy topics on that level. Like in the Dreamweaver, like I talked about grief, and that's a very, very serious, heavy topic. In the Dreamweaver, it's not fresh because her mom passed away and her grandma passed away before the book starts, but she's still dealing with it. And she's upset about her father like leaving. He leaves at the beginning of the book, but she's not. I don't know. I feel like if it was a high school book, it would have probably been there would have been a lot more desperation in the tone. But for middle grade, it was a lot more of a sweet, hopeful tone. And the expectation, I think, in middle grade too, is that there are more sweet, hopeful endings. I'm always a fan of a happily ever after, but like, or even not even a happily ever after, but just a realistically positive, hopeful note ever after. And right now, more than ever, I'm like really craving those happy or positive or at least hopeful endings in books and in everything.
Yeah, that's awesome. For me, you know what I love about middle grade? Middle grade readers are not afraid to be emotional, to like go there emotionally. They love it. They like highs are highs, lows are lows, and the whole world just depends on this. And they still have been like dream big. They still want to change the world. They're not jaded. Their heroes are still their heroes. Their idols are still their idols. And so it's so awesome that they like have these big, larger than life emotions, and the stakes are so high, but like they can't drive. Like they can't even like get their hair cut the way they want. It's like there's like so many limitations when you're 12. It's like the worst, and so I feel like the tension levels are already baked in. Like from the jump, you already have like such helplessness, but such like passion too. And it's like, what better way to tell? Who else to tell the story to than these, you know, tweens? They get it. They're not afraid to like enter into the darkness, and they will laugh out loud with you. And so that's like my favorite audience ever. I feel like you know how everyone has like their like real age, like their internal age. Like I'm totally 11 years old in my soul. There's just something like super passionate and hopeful. That, and I used to teach. I was a teacher for a long time, for almost 10 years in those grades, in those middle grades. And there's nothing cuter than, you know, like not cuter. That's the wrong word, but like, yeah, it's very inspirational, I should say.
So everybody keeps asking me where Pancho is, which is my dog. I don't know if you guys can see him. He's on the bed. He's very small. I don't know if my name's blocking him. He is there. He just hasn't moved. I'm sorry. Basically what everybody said about the hopefulness of middle grade age readers is like totally my favorite part of it as well. And it's also, I feel like the feeling of really wanting to do something but feeling helpless is something that is really specific to middle grade, but I feel like it's something that we feel our whole entire lives. And I think that's why when you read middle grade, you can really always connect with the characters, because like they want to do so much, but they feel so helpless and people don't believe them because they're younger. And it's such a frustrating feeling. And also I just really love middle grade humor. Like Jessica, I'm also around 11 or 12 when it comes to my personality. So anything that like makes them laugh makes me laugh. And also thinking about writing for those kids, I know that they are going to tear me apart. Like when I see them at school visits when schools reopen, because not only are they brutally honest in a way that like can completely psychoanalyze you by accident, but also they're not afraid to tell you like, I love you and I cried and, you know, this is the best book ever and I drew this thing for you. And it's such a like a big, it's such a so full of emotions, and like everything that you were saying, Jessica, I completely agree. And I just love it. I love kids in general, but kids that age, there's just like something about them. They're still so hopeful about like their possibility to impact the world. And I think that's such a beautiful thing that we should all try to hold on to, because it's really important.
That's awesome. So I guess for me, I like to write middle grade because for that age, that sort of, and I tend to write a little bit older middle grade, so 10 and up. But that's like the cusp of becoming an adolescent. And so your body's changing, your understanding of your role in your family, your identity's changing, your friends are changing, you're going to, you know, middle school or junior high, and everyone remembers that. Like everyone remembers that and what it was like if you went, you know, to a school, and how it's very intense. You're meeting all these people and you feel like everyone's thinking about you and no one's thinking about you because they're all thinking about themselves. And but you feel that everyone's thinking about you. And so there's just so much going on in like the brain at that time. And so to me, it's fascinating to write for that age and be able to like even hit some of these like tougher topics with a little bit of charm and humor, and keep it in a safe place for exploration as well. So maybe they're not quite ready for those, you know, upper young adult books, and maybe they're growing out of like the younger books, but this age is like, you can get such a range of topics and humor and then heart and like the whole gamut. And everyone, you know, I feel like even my friend, she was reading a middle grade book, and she was just like, I haven't finished a book like in 15 years. And I love this book so much. And it was just, I was like, yeah, because they're great. Everyone should read middle grade because they're like the best books.
Okay. For me, I think it's a little bit of what everybody said, Jessica and Clarabelle and everybody, you guys kind of said a lot of what I wanted to say. But I think for me also, though, it's one thing is I think that middle grade is when we can reach them the most. It's the most impactful age because you still haven't developed you're not jaded. You still haven't developed your own perspective in the world. And as authors, we can still influence that a little bit. if you look back like at superhero stories and you try and figure out what exactly happened, what was the starting point, we always go with the origin stories. We always go to the middle grade age group because that's where it all gets started. And I think almost it's almost like a little steady. You can kind of deconstruct life and take it apart and go back to middle grade when you were young, and those influences, everything you saw, your experiences, it molds who you become later in life. So I think it's the origin story that fascinates me about the kids at that age. Plus, I'm a teacher. I've been teaching middle grade for 20 years, so I hear the dialogue. I hear the rolling of the eyes, and I see all this stuff. It's my world, honestly. It's what I know better than anything else. So since I'm surrounded by it, it's almost my area of expertise. And they're just funny. The kids are funny as heck.
Yes.
They're amazing. Yeah.
What were your... Oh.
Sorry, no.
I was going to say, so the next question I wanted to ask is, what were your favorite character, or what was your favorite character to write outside of the main character? Because I feel like that's usually the one. Like, what's your favorite side character?
Is it me? Am I starting?
Yeah, I
Yes.
think
so.
Okay. There's a character in my book. Her name is Ginny, and she's Yumi's other Korean American friend, and they're in Hagwon together. And Hagwon is like the cram school that her parents enroll her in to get her ready for her big test. And Ginny is just hilarious. Ginny is just so funny. She's just so passionate about animal rights, and she's always like up in Yumi's face, like emailing her these I don't know, and she's a vegan, and she's just like really passionate about what she's passionate about. And she kind of acts as Yumi's like Korean conscience. So I kind of like did this thing. I was playing a lot with her two sides of her identity, being Korean, being American. She kind of has like a foil for each side. And so like Felipe is her American friend and like Ginny's her Korean friend. And they speak to different sides of her consciousness in terms of what she should do with comedy and her parents. So Ginny's like super practical. She's like that friend that's in your face that's like telling you the truth all the time, even though you don't want it. And she's not there to give you that hug, like that reassuring hug. She's just like, get your act together, And so you could say maybe I am Ginny. So that was really fun to write, just to be like a really exaggerated version of probably who I actually am inside.
I already have people saying Chunk in the chat. Chunk is the obvious answer. She's a fat cat in the book, and I love her. But I'm going to say that my favorite person to write was actually Babette, who is this witch grandmother. I mean, I love older people so much. I feel like ageism is such a horrible thing that happens. We shouldn't treat seniors like they're disposable, which has been happening a lot lately. And I really wanted to write a character that was like a grandmother and part of the adventure. And so Babette was hilarious to write. I mean, her license plate says "Eat my dust." She wanted to go on the adventure because she's like, I'm bored. And you guys can't do this alone, so I'm coming around to do it with you. And she's just amazing and awesome. And I love the dynamic between kids and their grandparents. And I really just love how much fun it can be. And I really wanted to show that. And Babette was just amazing. She was just so funny. And at the same time, like super formidable. Like I feel like if Babette was in Super Smash Bros, she would like really do damage. So especially if like she could bring Chunk with her, like I don't know who can beat them, to be quite honest. So yeah, I love Babette. She's amazing. She's my everything.
So I guess my favorite character to write was probably Yolanda's twin sister, Sonia. So they are twins, so Yolanda is sort of looks more like her mother's side of the family, dark curly hair, darker skin. And then her twin sister looks like the dad's side of the family. So she has reddish hair, she has lighter skin and freckles, and she also got the magical family trait that Yolanda did not get. And so there is like quite a bit of tension from the beginning between the two of them because they looked very different, even though they are twins. And then one got the trait and the other one didn't. And Yolanda's like very book smart and sort of introspective and like kind of sticks to herself. And Sonia is much more outgoing. And she like is very outdoorsy and very close with people, and so Yolanda's a little bit jealous of that. And so like being able to write their relationship as quite tense at the beginning, and then how they kind of come to an understanding of each other throughout the story was really pretty fun to write. Also, Sonia was the one that brings the machetes on the journey, and she knows how to use them. And she's quite outdoorsy and figures out how to, like, get everybody's needs taken care of. And she's very resourceful and very smart. And so that was pretty fun to write. It was fun to write her.
The character that I enjoyed reading the most was probably Max, but the character who just because he had so much heart and everything he did, he always surprised me, how wise he was too. But I think David was the one that I really enjoyed writing. David was the kid who was running for school site council, and his ideas were improving getting rid of the Chromebooks that the teachers ordered for the kids that they used to give us homework, and he wanted to exchange them for Nintendo Switches, things like that. So David lived in a different world than Efren, and Efren was very jealous of him a little bit because he got to ride his bike, which he couldn't do in the streets. He didn't have to wear a helmet. He had all the liberties, and he didn't seem to have all the responsibility that Efren did. So he's able to just be a kid. And I think that's one thing that I myself wanted when I was that age too. But the thing about David is that he's also the most loyal friend. And they do have moments when they're very deep. And most people would look at Efren and like, why are you even friends with that guy? But they don't get to see that other side that David has. And he's a really, really sweet kid. And but I think the biggest reason why I like the character so much is because the book is full of so many divides. David's divided in so many different ways, and I wrote the book right after the elections, and people were fighting, and it seems like you were either on this side or you're on this side, and that was it. There was no in between. And the story actually just portrays a friendship, and it's a friendship about a white kid and a Mexican kid. And they don't see color, and they're best buds. They're almost like brothers, and the world can be fighting, and it doesn't really matter because these two kids are best friends no matter what, and it really doesn't make any difference. So I guess their friendship is something that I was hoping for like that the rest of us could learn from. So that's why I think David's so awesome to me.
Oh, that's beautiful. One of the friends in the Dreamweaver was also one of my favorites to write. Her name is Issa, and she's like #goals for me, both as a middle schooler and as a grown-up. Like, she's just really confident. I just want to write a character who's like not arrogant. I don't think she's arrogant, but she's unabashedly confident. Like, she's smart and she knows it, and she's into fashion and style, and she's very, very kind, and she believes in being a good person, and she's not perfect. I didn't want to make her like obnoxiously too perfect. Like, she's, I think, like a lot of maybe especially confident or not just confident, just middle school girls, she's like a little bit mean and judgmental to her family and a little bit moody, which she shouldn't be. But she has a heart, and she apologizes when she's wrong, and she does love her family, even if she's like a little bit impatient with them. But she's just like happy and there to have fun, and her dream is to figure out a way to colonize Mars so that human growth will be sustainable. And she wants to, like, when she bowled, I was trying to think of ways to make bowling even more fun, like widely appealing. And so, like, when she's in her stressful moment in the bowling championship, she like imagines herself walking the red carpet when she's sashaying to go throw her bowling ball. And so she was just fun to write because she just always has a really good time and doesn't worry too much. She doesn't worry anywhere near as much as my main character, who I also love, of course, but she's more worried and more quiet, whereas Issa is just like, she's just like, I'm gonna live my best life. And it was fun to write someone like that.
That's lovely. All right, so we are almost out of time, so a little bit rapid fire with this last question. But if you could give us either one middle grade book you really loved recently, or a middle grade book that you think your main character would really love to read.
I think I go first. So one of my favorite series ever is Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. I feel like because Lucely is such a huge Harry Potter fan, she would really, really love that series, and I am obsessed with it. So it answers both. And if I could just quickly make one little comment. I know Ernesto said the thing about his two characters not seeing color, and I just want to say that just to challenge that a little bit, we should be able to see each other's color and still love and respect each other and acknowledge our culture. I think the whole idea behind not seeing color can sometimes be a little bit derailing. So I just wanted to quickly put that out there for anybody who's watching.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Let's see. I'm gonna have to say, okay. So the best middle grade book I've read recently was Jessica's book, Stand Up Yumi Chung. I loved it so much. I am buying it for everyone's kids for for birthdays and stuff. I loved it so much. So everyone needs to read that book. It is such a breath of fresh air in this crazy dark world, and I laughed and I cried, and it was great. So,
Oh, thank you.
Let's see. For me, I think it's two books, and one of them is this anthology here. I think Ephraim would love the diversity that's in this book. I think it's a Windows book, and it's a front door book. It's got just a story for everybody. The other one is one of my favorite middle grade books of all time. It's Operation Frog Effect. Eight different perspectives, brilliantly written. And I think for Ephraim, since now he's becoming a little bit more educated about the world and more about having an impact, I think he would probably, without anybody knowing, he would probably sneak a YA book in. When he heard about this, there's no way that Ephraim would not start reading this book. So
I love it.
I think that Zoe would love all of your books. Like I said, I'm currently reading all of them at the same time. So I'm really enjoying everything at the same time. And I'm really enjoying, so I haven't finished any of them yet, but they're wonderful so far. And I'm really enjoying escaping into them. And another one that I recently finished is called What If a Fish by Anika Fajardo. That's coming out, I think, in August. I read an arc and it was really good. And I think that Zoe would have really enjoyed the protagonist, because the protagonist is half Colombian and so also half Latinx, and sort of struggling with a lot of the same issues about trying to connect with their Latinx heritage and what that side means to them, and also worried about family issues. And they just I think they would be friends. I think I'm going to put out there that I think the main characters would be friends in real life. And actually, when I was writing The Dreamweaver, I had a scene where Zoe's looking at her mom's 80s middle or book, not necessarily middle grade, but her 1980s bookshelf, and she has to pick a book. And I really struggled to find a diverse book to put in that scene. And I'm sad thinking about all. I mean, I'm sure that a diverse, really well-known, really popular, a classic type of book that everyone would know. And so I feel sad. I mean, I don't want to there are many, many books that have come before that I'm sure were there in the 80s and 90s, and I'm probably just not educated enough to know them all. But I'm sad because I know that there weren't as many as we definitely need, and we still don't have anywhere close to as many as we need. But I'm so glad that we have so many more choices right now, and these books are so darn gorgeous and amazing and meaningful, and it really makes me sad, but also for the past, but happy for now and for the future. And hopefully that there will be many, many, many more, especially from you guys and from Anika Fajardo and from everyone, all these other amazing authors who are debuting and finally getting their voices heard.
And we still have one more answer, I think, right?
Yeah, Jessica, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. So Yumi would really love the First World Punk, Celia Perez.
So
Who's
That's so good.
Yeah, we share the same editor actually, but Malu is such a badass. She's so unapologetically into punk rock, and she's also kind of grappling with identity issues, being Latinx and having biracial parents, and kind of figuring out where she is in between. So I think they would relate on that level, but I think the fact that she shows up at this new school with this crazy eye makeup and just don't care, I think Yumi would really find that really admirable, and because she hopes to be that a little bit more like that.
I love that book so much.
Great one. Love it.
Well, thank you all so much for these answers and for coming here and for participating in the Social Distance Book Fest. I believe Bethany is wrapping all of this up. But yeah, just a wholehearted thank you for you and for your stories and for joining us all here in the comments, the authors. I hope you all had a good time.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Super
Thanks,
fun.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Bye.
Thank you.